So, let's talk about a huge shift that's happening in global finance. South Africa has decided to start trading with China using the Chinese yuan. That means they're cutting out the US dollar. Now, this is a move with some serious implications. And the story behind it? Well, it's less about economics and a whole lot more about power. To really get this, let's start with something simple. Have you ever been bullied? Seen someone get pushed around, and you just wonder, why don't they stand up for themselves? That feeling, that whole power dynamic, that's really at the heart of everything we're about to talk about. And that really brings us to the core of the story, right? There's always a breaking point, a moment when you have to push back, where you decide that a line has been crossed one too many times and a new standard has to be set. This is the story of South Africa reaching that exact point. Okay, so to really understand why this pushback is such a big deal, we first need to get a handle on the system they're pushing back against. Let's break down how the US dollar got so powerful in the first place. At the very center of global finance is a system called SWIFT. Now, all that stands for is the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. But here's what it actually does. It's basically this super secure text messaging network that lets more than 11,000 banks all over the world talk to each other to move money around. Without it, international trade would literally just stop. And here's the kicker. This entire system is built on the US dollar. So let's say Kenya wants to buy something from India. They can't just pay in their own currency. Nope. First, they have to convert their money into US dollars to make the trade. This single fact creates this constant, massive global demand for the dollar. And that's what keeps it on top. And you can imagine this gives the United States an incredible amount of leverage. It basically turns the financial system into a massive tool for foreign policy. If a country doesn't fall in line with US interests, think Iran, North Korea, and, most recently Russia, they can find themselves cut off from SWIFT. And that means they're pretty much frozen out of the global economy. So, with all that in mind, let's zoom in on the specific fight that pushed South Africa to make this move. This wasn't something that happened overnight. It was the boiling point after a whole series of diplomatic clashes. It really broke down step by step. First, you had accusations from the US about what was happening with farmers in South Africa, which South Africa saw as serious meddling. Then, South Africa got suspended from a really important American trade deal. After that, a huge diplomatic snub. The US president refused to even show up to the G20 summit hosted in Johannesburg. And the final straw, for the official G20 handover, which is for heads of state, the US sent a junior diplomat. South Africa just refused. That was it. The relationship had hit rock bottom. And this is where the story completely pivots. Because what do you do when the main system is being used against you? You start looking for an alternative. And South Africa decided it was time for a major strategic change by looking east. This is the moment it all happened. South Africa's Standard Bank became the very first bank on the entire African continent to connect directly to something called CIPS. That's China's cross-border interbank payment system. It is, for all intents and purposes, a parallel financial universe that China built specifically as an alternative to the Western-run SWIFT system. And the difference between these two systems is pretty fundamental. See, SWIFT is just a messaging system. It sends the instructions for the payment. But CIPS does both. It's a messaging system and a settlement system, meaning it sends the instructions and it handles the actual money. This allows countries to trade directly with each other in Chinese yuan or even their own local currencies, with the whole thing controlled from Beijing. You can see why for countries feeling squeezed by the West, this looks like a very, very attractive option. So why does one bank making this move matter so much? Well, it all comes down to this number. $500 billion. That's how much trade happens between China and South Africa every single year. It's a quarter of South Africa's total global trade. Just imagine, all of that business suddenly no longer needs to be swapped into US dollars first. That's a game changer. All right, so the switch has been flipped. What happens now? What are the real-world consequences of this decision, not just for South Africa, but for the entire global financial picture? Well, for South Africa, the benefits are immediate. Their companies save a ton of money by just cutting out those currency conversion fees. It also reduces their economic reliance on a country they clearly feel has been treating them unfairly. But maybe the biggest thing, this move sets a powerful precedent. It's like they've drawn a map showing other nations that, yes, there is another way to do business outside of the dollar's world. And if you want to understand the feeling behind all this quote from South Africa's president just nails it. This isn't just about cash. It's a huge statement about sovereignty. It's a declaration that they will not be bullied into picking sides or choosing their friends. So here's where we are. South Africa has taken a monumental first step. A major economy in Africa has just plugged itself into a non-Western financial system to trade with its biggest partner. And that leaves us with a massive question for the future of global finance. One African bank just made the switch. The real question is, how many are going to follow?